Corporate funding is provided by the following. Foundation funding is provided by.
If it were up to this man,
hey Paula, this is Kaz.
SunPower would have taken off long ago. Larry Kazmersky works at the National Renewable Energy Lab in Golden, Colorado. He's been trying to improve solar technology ever since Jimmy Carter put solar panels on the White House. And he survived Ronald Reagan taking them down and slashing his budget, which no president has yet to restore to 1980 levels. But he's never lost faith in the sun. Kazmersky's office looks like a cross between a mad scientist's lab and a head shop. Kaz, as he's called by everyone, even designs solar ties. An unabashed solar optimist, he studied virtually every aspect of solar science and has become a collector of solar history.
Yet in this modern age, men have at last harnessed the sun with the Bell solar battery. Portable radios powered by sunlight have already been made as laboratory models.
This is 1958. Pretty risque for that time. And by the way, I have that radio. This is the radio. It's a transistor radio that runs off of solar cells that are on the top here. It doesn't work perfectly, but then I tell people that, you know, I'm just a little bit older than this radio and I have parts of me that don't work anymore either.
In 1979, Kaz was in attendance at the solar panel's main coming out party. Although the sun was nowhere to be found the day President Carter visited NRAIL.
But I'm afraid that the solar gods weren't shining here on our Solar Energy Institute. And it started raining and then got cold, we got sleet, it snowed. We had brought in a big photovoltaic array. It was about 30 kilowatts. And here is President Carter standing in front of this 30 kilowatt array, reaching out with his hand and thought he would help a little bit by wiping the surface of these solar cells. And I remember I was able to grab the president's arm at that time because I was really afraid, thinking that this would be the first time that an American president had been electrocuted by a solar technology. And I didn't think this would do our technology very good.
But it's not the threat of electrocution that is solar technology's greatest drawback. It's the in and out, up and down nature of the sun. All solar panels or photovoltaics use sunlight to produce electricity. The stronger the rays, the more juice they produce. It's a simple process that begins with the individual solar cells that make up a panel.
If you were small enough and could crawl inside one of those solar cells, it would just be a hubbub of activity.
A solar cell is like a sandwich. The top part is for protection. The bottom is its base, and the middle layer, made of silicon, is where the action is. When particles of sunlight, called photons, strike individual atoms of the silicon, they easily break the weak bond between silicon's nucleus and its outer orbit of electrons. Once freed, the electrons travel to the top of the silicon layer, where they move in a current along metal conducting strips. Then it's across the panels to wires that feed the electricity to the house. Today's solar panels produce twice as much electricity as earlier models. And they're cheaper than ever. These benefits are helping to create a solar renaissance from sunny California to leafy New England. Once too heavy and cumbersome for most roofs, today's panels are extremely easy to live with, which suits new enthusiasts like Phil Rivas just fine.
You install it and forget about it. There is no fuss, no muss.
And no batteries like the old days, because most owners stay wired to the local power grid and don't need batteries for nighttime power.
The house is just like a hybrid car. Half the time it runs off the solar panels, and half the time energy is coming in from the grid. I love it.
The Reeveses live in Somerville, Massachusetts, a few minutes' drive from downtown Boston. Phil is an industrial designer. His wife Tresha is in personnel. And their son PJ wants to be a pilot. The Reeveses were the first in their community to go solar.
I started thinking about solar energy, solar panels, the environment, probably back in the 70s when I was a teenager during the first energy crisis. And back then I was thinking, boy, when I grow up, I'm going to do stuff differently than my parents are doing right now. And unfortunately, it's taken me 30 years to actually make that happen.
You are the sunshine of my life. That's why I'll always...
Bill and Debbie Lord are passionate advocates for solar power. Their custom-designed home near Kennebunkport, Maine, is their second solar house and is prominently featured in solar magazines. Bill Lord has a website for the curious.
This podcast originates from the Maine Solar House.
And he offers on-site tours for those interested in converting to solar power.
Our goal is to serve.
He begins his show and tell in the basement.
This is our power generation station. This is where we convert the electricity that comes down from the roof to household current. When the sun hits the panels on the roof, it agitates the electrons in the panels. The electrons come down the wires to these inverters. It's direct current. Most homes don't operate on direct current, they operate on alternating current. So these two white boxes are converting it to household AC.
In addition to their solar electricity panels, the Lords have solar hot water panels that feed a radiant heating system in their floors. With large insulated tanks to store the sun-heated water, they have vastly lowered their gas bills as well as their electric bills.
The system handles itself. It turns itself on in the morning, it shuts itself off at night. We can be far away and it still works on our behalf.
Meaning his house is producing electricity whether he uses it or not. And what he doesn't use goes back to the grid for other houses to use. And since the utility company gives him credit for the excess electricity, something called net metering, Bill's bill is shockingly low.
On a monthly basis, we pay $7.47 to be hooked up to the power company. Essentially, we pay nothing for electricity.